This week's lesson is all about keeping the left hand kind of organized when you have position shifts in your music. One of the things we do in guitar is we play in positions, right? We do this all the time. You can do like a 1 finger per fret. That kind of 1 finger per fret position playing is the basis of so much technique, right? Like if we play a major scale. Or we play some kind of technical exercise, like from Pumping Nylon. That kind of 1 finger per fret stance is something that we just practice so much and we get really, really good at it. Now the problem with repertoire, of course, is that repertoire shifts all over the place. And when that shift occurs, students' technique, it tends to get sloppy and it becomes complicated. They perceive the piece as being complicated. And because their hand changes, sometimes like their technique just goes off the rails a little bit. And it destabilizes everything. But if we reorganize our thinking into just position playing, from a technical standpoint, then we can practice our pieces and make our pieces relatively easy. And then we just have to focus on the shifts that we do and the musical context, like playing legato or connecting the phrasing, right? And from that, we can bring the piece together in an organized way. Now, we use this concept all the time in our technique practice, right? If we play a scale, with a shift in it, this scale in particular requires one shift, right? So here's the first position. I mean, it's in fourth position. It's the first block. Here's the second block. So first block, second block, put them together. That's how your repertoire should work, right? You have one block that's really compact, very organized. You know, like not much finger movement. All the fingers are staying over the frets. And then you have another block. Again, all the fingers are going to be organized, minimal movements, very easy. And then you're going to piece them together. That's how we should approach our repertoire. So there's a technical element, and that's the position playing and keeping our hand organized and efficient and economic. And so we must study the piece in that way. We have to, right? In order to be good at executing the music. And of course, there's a whole nother element. There's the legato element, or in a piece like musical phrasing, dynamic shaping, the legato, or whatever articulation. And so, of course, once you've gone over the technical elements, you have to work on smoothing out that transition as much as possible. But the only thing the students should really be focusing on is the actual shift. The actual shifting from one point to the other. That's the only difficult part. If your technique is in relatively good order, that should be super easy. It's just there's very minimal movement. There's actually not much opportunity for mistake even. But it's the shift and making sure that when you shift up, your technique doesn't derail or your fingers aren't stretching out in weird ways. Everything just has to be, the tension has to be released from the fingers and the arm just moves the whole hand up, moves that ideal technique position up the neck. And then you just do that other easy block. So this is a way of making our pieces as easy as possible. So let's do an example. First, let's start with an easy example. Let's do the Torrega piece, the Lagrima. You all know this piece. If we break this piece in just the opening phrase of this piece into sections, it's really easy, right? Shift, shift. Like any beginner player can play the individual groups. They can do this. If I set their hand up and tell them like where the notes are, an absolute beginner could theoretically do this. And then the next one. And then the next one. It's all very easy. And then this one. Now, when we put it all together though, students, their hand positions can go off, all sorts of things can derail, right? So your ability to play each individual position is really, really important, that you understand exactly what to do in each one. And then when you shift between them, your arm just moves the hand up a position. So my recommendation is to break the piece up into these positions, play the music to understand that you can do it and that you can do it cleanly and you can do it with good technique, and then go to the next position and do it well and do it with good technique and do it musically, and then start piecing them together. And all you really have to think about then, if you can do the individual parts, is getting your hand from one place to the next. And just remember that the arm just moves the hand up. The thumb shouldn't drag behind. The fingers shouldn't like start reaching out. You release, or you release the pressure at least if you're using a guide finger. And then you just release that pressure and your arm just moves your hand up. So it should be pretty easy to put together. Let's take a look at a slightly more complicated piece of repertoire. This David Kellner piece, for example. In this piece, you might just, again, break it into sections. So you have to be able to do that position before you shift, right? Fine. Then just move to the other position, get ready. Or actually, that's all the notes within that position. Next position. Next position. If I can do each of those sections, then all I have to do is focus on getting from one to the other. That's the only thing that you have to do. And that's relatively easy, especially in both of those pieces I played. There's guide fingers. I just guide this finger down on that string. And so you just get from one place to the other and make sure that you keep your technique totally organized and your left hand organized into position, so that kind of one finger per fret. And of course we break that one finger per fret rule depending on, if there's a chord with notes on the same fret, but that's an exception to the rule almost. You just have to kind of keep your hand as organized in blocks as possible. So all you're doing is just organizing your hand and then moving it about on the guitar from fret to fret. I found I was watching some of my students play this week, and I was really noticing that when they shifted positions, their hand position changed. They're like this, and I was like, good, but then they shift and their hand position looks slightly different for no reason, and so it just kind of derails as they go through the piece. And it messes with their sense of organization in the left hand, and it makes them think that the piece is really difficult. But when I stop them and I say, just stop playing for a second, and I say, play this position, they do it, and I say, great job, because they did it well. And then I say, play this, and then they do that, and they do it well, and I say, great job. And then the only thing we're going to work on after that is getting from point A to point B without letting anything go off the rails. And I know I sound really repetitious when I'm saying this, but you'd be so surprised how many students practice in like kind of a very disorganized way. They'll just kind of like play the piece over and over, and they'll try to hone their bad derailed technique, which is really inefficient. You just want to practice really solid technique, and then of course you have to connect it musically with good phrasing and with good legato. So that's like the end thing that you're going to really put together to make sure that your technique work is working for you. So I hope this idea stimulates something in your mind about how you might approach your pieces, and how you might just really divide them into technique blocks and then work on the musical connection between them, making sure that everything within one block is super easy to play, and then you're just going to focus on a clean shift and then to the next easy block that you're going to play. This can be applied to any piece of repertoire for sure. So try it out and see if you can get your left hand organized this week, like I've been doing with my students.